Hub Podcast. Let's go.
You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land. His job was to dispose of enemy personnel. To kill. Period. Win by attrition.
But enough about this, dude. This is your episode,
hey,
Trevor.
I got a lot of stuff that I can talk about, that we can talk about. A lot of career stuff, a lot of personal stuff, a lot of like what's next, a lot of perspective things that we can discuss. And it's kind of, we can, however you want to talk or what you want to talk about is kind of drive that. And like I have a perspective and thoughts on a lot of different things. And I just want to see like what you want to talk about and like what your audience is kind of looking for. And like, maybe we can touch on something that can help people that is, either trying to go into special operations, currently in special operations, maybe at the end of their career, or like they're out and they're kind of lost in a way. And maybe they need some direction and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Well, welcome to Security Hub Podcast, and this is your episode, Trevor Beaman. Thank you for being here today, man. I want to touch into your journey. I think one of the most important things we can do as advocates, once, and even not after, you're on your way out. Retirement is right there. And one of the things that I always harp on is don't wait for the last minute. Find your next calling, find your next mission, find your next purpose. And be brave and courageous enough. You, after a decade or 2 decades, and for some guys, 3 decades of being able to pick up, kid up, and go into the unknown, now all of a sudden you start allowing fear to dictate your next move.
Yeah.
So, Trevor, how are you navigating this pivotal moment in your career?
Well, I think I kind of got thrown into it in a way. So when I was in Key West at dive school, I was going through some rough times, and I ended up actually up here at the behavioral health facility at the Emerald Coast Behavioral Hospital here in Panama City Beach. And when I was there, I kind of discussed a lot about what I had been through in my life. And I saw that it was helping the people in the room with me. And I thought to myself, I was like, these people are listening to what I'm saying, and so there has to be some context in this that is going to help people later on. And at that kind of moment, that 2 months of going to rehab, I was like, this is a fire in me that I saw, like I felt in myself when I was graduating college, when I was trying to go to the Q course. I felt that same feeling, and so that was back in September of 2019, and it's kind of propelled me in a direction of like being a person of hope for other people that can share a story and that they can move past this period of their life so that they can find something else that's a fire in their life.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I've been able to tap into. We don't realize the power of our story. We don't realize the power of being able to share with our tribe what we've been through. We take that quiet professional idea, that statement, and we own it, and we just go through life, go through our career, and we don't say something. But what we don't realize is when we're finally vulnerable enough to share and allow others to see what we've gone through and overcome, we allow them to see a pathway to their own healing, to their own journey. And I'm in the same boat. I went to Laurel Ridge in El Paso, and that saved my life. But mental health is something that's so tricky, right? It's so scary to say, like, I went inpatient, and people don't want to promote that. They don't want to talk about that. How did you navigate that when you came back and was like, because they want to put us in a box, or they want you to kind of go off in the corner. How'd you navigate that, being able to share your testimony of what it did for you?
So the biggest thing that happens while I'm there, I get a phone call from the Care Coalition, and the Care Coalition guys like, here, Trevor, you got 2 choices and what you want to do here. We can pursue a med board, or we can find something else in the Army that you can do. I was telling them, like, being a team sergeant is not in the cards right now. I can't physically and mentally go back into that space again. And the choice came down to my wife and I, that I committed to wanting to serve for 20 years. The pension, the financial gains that I would get by spending 20 years in the Army weighed a lot on me and my family. And so getting to that point meant a lot. So SOCOM essentially was like, we want to keep you, and let's find a place that you can go after SWCC. You can't stay down in Key West for a longer period of time as an E8. Like, there's debilitating and stuff. You have to move out somewhere else. And so Matt Smith was the sergeant major down there. He's a phenomenal guy. He works at Sheepdog. Excellent person. He was like, we have a first sergeant job within SOCOM that you can go do. You just got to be willing to do it. And then I was like, well, I've decided that I want to stay in the Army. And if the Army's telling me to go somewhere that I can be a benefit in a role that's critical, like, I will take it. And I feel that there's at times that the Army's reaching out and saying, hey, we have all these assignments and all these different things that you can go do. But the guy's like, no, I only want to stay here. I don't want to PCS. I don't want to move my family. So we're just hearing a lot of no's. But so the Army, the regiment, SOCOM is trying to help you stay in the Army, be productive, be able to take on a new role. And you're saying, no, that I'm not going to do that. So that's where there's kind of a hard part of, like, I'm telling the Army one thing, and the Army's giving me something back, and I'm pushing back on it and saying no. I think there really needs to be, like, expectations got to come down a bit, and you got to be willing to give some back to the Army.
Yeah. And it's a hard thing, right? Especially when your entire identity is wrapped around being on a team, being in that mission. And if those opportunities do come down the way and you do want to stay, be open to seeing another path. And that's a hard thing for a lot of guys that are caught in that predicament, in that situation. And by all means, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But at least if they offer you something that's within the realm of something that you might be passionate about, be willing to look into it. That's just one of the things.
So it's a real conundrum for us, because with the global war on terror, that was development, that was going somewhere and becoming something bigger. But now we don't have that same deployment cycle that is giving this type of career development and giving guys opportunities to go work at different headquarters and seeing a larger perspective of, like, what's happening. So now I feel like we got to go back to the team room and look at that team sergeant and see, how are you mentoring these guys so that they can get developed? And it sucks to say you got to go somewhere else after 3 or 4 years after being on a team, where we didn't have to do that. We got to stay for 5-6 years and not have to go do a SWCC, or not have to go to a TSOC, go down to SOC South, or go somewhere else and go to JRTC and be an OC. So all those things weren't on the cards, because SOCOM had all of these missions that we had to go complete, and we needed guys on teams. So for now, what are guys doing to get that same experience that we got because we were deploying to Iraq or Afghanistan, Syria, different places in the Middle East, and we got to be in different headquarters to get a larger perspective on the strategic environment. So that should be the push on these young guys, is how do we get as much experience as possible? Because before, it was just done for us, right? That's like going and saying about going on a JSET, right? That is a new skill that guys are going to have to build, where we kind of just went to Green Wrap and got on a C-17, huge aircraft, and went to Afghanistan, and we were there. We didn't have to plan shit. It was all done for us. And so now it's going back to say, hey, we got to learn this basic stuff again. And so that those basic skills of counseling, mentorship, leadership are really like forced on that person versus where the environment forced it on us.
Yeah. And the other thing is the new generation of Green Beret has to embrace a new dynamic, a new shift in warfare. They grew up seeing us. They grew up seeing the video games, the movies, but that's not your war. Your future it's arguably more complex. You should be excited for your new mission. And it's going to take a lot of work. I've been out for almost a full year now, and it's completely different. It's a whole different environment, a whole different world. But that new recruit coming into SF has to be able to sit down and say, you know what? I'm not going to get the Afghan or Iraq, but I'm going to get something completely different. I got to be able to embrace that. Like that's more exciting.
I think there's a lot to say to be the best prepared team to go to war, though. I think there's a lot of honor in that. And I think that guys got to hold on to that hard and saying, like, I'm going to train the hardest. I'm going to go do the most difficult training. we're going to go everywhere. And like, that's what I'm going to do for 4 years. I'm sorry, mom, I'm leaving. I gotta go to God. Here, we got to go down south. We got to train. And that's my job, is to train other people. So like other Americans don't have to. Like that's why you should be a Green Beret, is that 12-man team is able to force multiply in other countries so that other Americans don't have to go there and fight. I mean, holding on to that core idea in our hearts, should be driving you to work every day. Even though the desire to get in a gunfight, I get it. I totally understand that, because that's why I joined the Army. Yeah. That is so awesome. But as we know, that there's a lot of consequences with coming down with that wish, and that's something you're going to have with you for the rest of your life. So, I mean, and bad shit can happen down south too. And so exactly. All these guys are preparing, physically. They're preparing, they're going to the dietetic, they're going to Thor 3 for physical therapy. All these guys are learning about how to take care of their body. But one little aspect that seems to be, jumping out a lot is where do I go when all the demons and all the things that I do and all the places I've been start to haunt me when I'm back at home?
Yeah. Yeah, man. We didn't have the coping skills. We didn't have the knowledge, and I don't regret. I'm grateful for the experiences. I'm grateful for what got me here, healed, and on my journey. But it is great to see that younger guys are starting to gravitate and incorporate things like mindfulness and yoga, and being willing to understand that mindset and discipline are really important on and off, work. Being able to understand that maybe drinking constantly isn't the best thing.
Right. For sure.
It is nice being able to drive down and look at Red Door and see that it's not as packed, and something. I'm kind of hopeful that maybe the culture's shifting and guys are kind of like, you know what, I don't need to burn it down every weekend, because come to find out, it's not great for you. The warrior needs to be disciplined both in war and at home, and that's something that, if we aspire to be like all these great warriors, we should also incorporate how they maintain their resiliency, how they maintain that mental strength, because it wasn't alcohol or drugs.
So that's an awesome point. So that's kind of where we're coming in this fireside chat of perspective of what we should be doing and how can we give it advice and guidance. So a lot of us took a path of bad, and we generally came from a place that people weren't teaching us different mindfulness, yoga, recollection, reflection. None of those things were in our, taught to us as kids. We kind of were like, go outside and just do your thing. And when you come back, there'll be some food on the table. And then we go and join the service, and it's kind of like really shut down. We don't show emotion. And then we go through like SEER school, where they teach us to stay in a certain area and how to always bring stuff back to that. Yeah. So that's not teaching us how to talk about what I went through and how to reflect on the things I went through. It's kind of a lot of escape and come up with dirty lies about why I'm doing this, why I'm here. So we get that. And then we have this mantra of quiet professional, what I think isn't explained very well. I think it's just put on us, and we grow an identity inside it in us that says, we don't talk about what we do. We don't talk about what we went through. That's another life of mine that I don't ever bring up. And that's just kind of like what I do on the side. And like I come home and I try to be the best dad ever. But it's hard. So all that kind of like compounds together to say is like, who can I go to learn how to take care of my mind? And like we all have, and it's being screamed from the mountain right now. And I love that this mindset thing is out, and a lot of people are saying really the same thing, across the board, is whatever you think is what your body's going to do. And that's pretty much it. And so if you can change the dirty thinking in your brain and want to live a better life over time, that's going to happen. And that's really the core of what everyone's like yelling about: leadership, personal accountability, respect, self-love. All of it comes down to saying that I trust that my brain is powerful than anything else in the world. And if I have a clean brain and I have clean thinking, like I'm probably going to be pretty good. But the thing is that someone's got to teach us that. It's not just known. Yes. You have to be taught. And it's like learning how to play a game. Like someone else has to show you how to play the game. And once the game is shown, like life becomes so much easier. And you can be in control of your thoughts, and you can then control of what your inside of your body is, how is responding to this environment that we're in.
I think that is absolutely one of the first things that I tapped into. And that's why I leaned heavily into mindfulness. That's why I started peeling back the layers and chasing it down. Because once somebody shows you that you can bring your focus all the way back and redirect it and not have to stay in rumination, like that spoke to me on a deep level. And I understood that it was already taught to me. Every time if you're a sniper, you're intimately aware of going to CIFSIC and sitting down at the range and being frustrated, and that sniper instructor coming up, and not with aggression, not with anger in a voice, but saying, hey, come up off glass, take a deep breath, calm down, focus. What are we doing? Take 5 minutes. All right, get back on glass. Now you're present. I didn't know I was doing mindfulness in that moment.
Oh yeah.
Or when you're sitting there doing bobs in the pool, horrible in the water. Shout out to Mike.
Yeah.
He did everything
Phenomenal.
he could. But the one thing that he taught me, the one thing that really, really honed in, was the ability to understand that bobs were a recovery mechanism. And then later on, it was 2 years after that moment in the pool that I realized, deep breath in through my nose, inhale, slowly exhale. Don't think about anything. Just repeat that over and over again. That's a meditation. That's mindfulness. And I'm like, how many guys are struggling with living in the future or being trapped in the past and never able to focus on the present moment? Because if you're a team sergeant or a senior on a team, you're constantly living with that calendar. I need to get this done. I need to do this. Never live in the present moment. And then you do the internal work, the hard work, the mind work of saying, hey, I'm going to let go of this. I'm going to focus on this right now and what's in front of me. It's the most important thing that you can teach somebody. Like, yeah, all your long-term tracking will get done. Everything you need to do. But what you stop doing is this bullshit of trying to do everything all at once. Because that's not productivity. That's just driving yourself insane. And I'm not ashamed to say it took me to like my late 30s to go through this. Like nobody teaches us these things. Nobody's there. So you're 100% correct. Now being able to like speak and champion this to other professionals, and now I'm seeing other guys that are still lethal, still on a team, and they're aware of this. That's a more potent warrior than anything. Like that. That's the guy you want at the front of the fight. Like you're not going to worry about anything with somebody like that leading your team. So it's now starting to become more aware. So I'm hopeful, and there's great organizations getting involved in teaching this.
So I'll take it back to Micah. So I met Micah for the first time when I went to Key West, and there's something Micah did to me about, you're going to talk about mindfulness, and I'm going to tell you a little story about how I had an epiphany about mindfulness without anyone ever really showing me. So as you know, Micah's a big spear fisherman, and I had never spearfished in my life before I went down to Key West. And so I started spearing with Micah. And then I kind of started spearing on my own by my house down there on Trumbull Point. And what I started to realize is that when I was in the water, looking at fish at the reef, is that all the stuff in my past, all the stuff that I was going through at home, all the things I was thinking about the future was gone. And I credit that being able to figure out mindfulness to that guy. And that's what I think like a leader does, is to show you something that you may enjoy that can bring some happiness and joy in your life. And you're having fun doing it. And so, I mean, that same perspective goes to guys that go to the gym every day, that do CrossFit, that do ultra marathons, that go sailing, go surfing, all of those different like things. It puts you, now that I say it, like when people go out and be like, I don't think about anything else but being right here. And that's what mindfulness is just putting you in a place where you're so hyper focused on that skill that you can't think about anything else. And then spearfishing, like your life kind of depends on it at sometimes, because like you get hypoxic, you can get ran over by boats. Like there's sharks, there's different barracuda, there's different things that are there that could hurt you. So then you're like always searching, looking. But then, so you look at that, and then you go all the way back to Afghanistan, and we're on a patrol, and there's everything going on around us. And all we think about is that moment and those people. It's the same thing. And so, yes, we have got over this fear of dying. That has to come first. That every time I go outside the wire, that something bad's going to happen to me or my boys. That fades away in time. So that gets discarded. Like we realize we're already dead at this point, and we stop thinking about that because we find that it's wasteful in our brain to keep thinking about that. So we put it away. We say that doesn't exist. And then we're just there. And so I think that environment automatically makes it happen. And it's the best thing ever. Right. So this is the experience. There's so many super high emotions, super high things that are going on in your body that make going back to that place and that moment very lucrative. And it's like, I just want to go back to that. It's an easy life. It's eat, sleep, lift. And we're present every moment because it matters that we are, and we don't have to work to do it. It just, because of the environment we're in, it automatically is happening. So being here, we have to work at it. So let's find something that's not work. Let's find something that's fun, that puts us into that mindfulness state so that you can get a break from reality. And that's what guys got to like. Yeah. I mean, after getting out of the Army and knowing that routine of what the Army has you doing, like it's happening to you on a daily basis. So what happens when you don't have that team sergeant, team leader telling you what to do all the time? What have you done to replace that routine and to put you in a place where you're taking care of your self-care? So that's like, so for some folks, they just got to go out and find something that they're really shitty at, because by finding something that you're bad at, you have to focus on it. Like, for an example, that's why we love to travel, because when we go to a new place, we see everything as it's new, and we notice every person, we notice every street, we notice every building, every tree, we see it all. And then we come home and we don't have that same perspective. So that's what guys got to do, is they got to put themselves in a new environment so that they get all of that in them to make them feel present.
When I started studying mindfulness and getting my certifications, I realized that first mistake that I made, I always focused on practice. It's mindfulness practice, but it's not. It's learning how to incorporate it. And at first, yeah, you do your formal practice every day. You do your informal practices as you're studying and you're learning, but it's teaching you how to incorporate it into your life. So it's the way you live. And once I had that moment of like, oh shit, like this is not just something I clock in and I do for 15 minutes and then I go do some mindful eating later on in the day. You're doing that in the class. You're doing that to get, when you're meeting the requirements for your teacher. And shout out to Ted Meisner, that man, and the way he taught mindfulness to me finally clicked and I understood. These are all lessons that I can apply, and exactly how you said it. When we're deployed, you are consciously aware of every single thing that you're doing. You're lining up for your chalk. You're getting your guys ready to go. But as soon as you get on that bird and when that ramp drops, that is a true mindful moment. And people don't understand that.
Yeah.
You start moving out. You start hearing the radio chatter, and you're not projecting into the future. You're one step here, moving forward. Okay. Phase line after phase line, checking in. Satcom's down. I got to move to this. And it's understanding, able to bring back that present moment awareness that I had without the traumatic events of bad days, the traumatic events of those really bad situations, and reliving that. So once you're able to reconcile and go through the healing of when you had those bad missions, when you had those bad deployments, but understanding within all that bad, there's those moments where you were truly living mindfully, and understanding that was kind of a big thing of like, hey, I wasn't constantly stressed out of the day-to-day. It was the day-to-day stuff back here that made me lose my friggin' mind. When we're deployed, everything's just like you said, got gym, I got to do this con op, we got to do the after actions, rehab all your kit, boom, 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 move on. You're intimately aware of every moment of every day, because, hey, this is a real world situation. It's life or death. And being able to take those lessons learned without the trauma, without thinking that my life's constantly in danger, is one of the most important things we can do. Because like you dissect those moments, you can find greatness in them and use them to amplify your life. And you're right. Find something that you love to do. That's where I see a lot of veterans struggle, because they get out, they're not active, they're not passionate about something, and they lose their purpose.
So like you could go back to Hoffman during the Star Course and think about those movements, and you're like, all I cared about was getting to that next point. And that's what you can do after. Like you could just walk in the woods and just set up I mean, if you more wanted to, you could set up a land nav course on your own, and it costs $0. Nothing. You can just develop it yourself, and you're like, I'm just going to spend time outside. Because that's, if you go, we go back to the beginning, that's what we were doing. We spent time outside alone. Like that's it. I mean, it seems that simple, that like you need to go sit by a fire again and reflect on life, and maybe tell some people how you feel. That's probably I think maybe in our generation in a way, and maybe even before all that, I think the storytelling aspect of how different missions and different things went on made you feel. A lot of people talk about events and things, guys getting blown up, trucks getting blown up, firefights, all that. But no one's saying like, well, how did that make you feel inside? And I think that if at that AAR, that after action review, if there was mindfulness taught some mental health stuff taught, storytelling taught to team leaders, team sergeants, that they would be like, tell me what you saw and how it made you feel. And if there was just just give me a 5-minute recap of how that was. And all the guys went around the room. I think later on, the ability to talk about that situation would be completely different. And I did this ketamine treatment a few years back, and it allowed my brain to kind of show me like this body was worth taking care of, and that I can reflect on the things in the past and not let it hurt me. And it was a real cool experience. I think that if you're going through hard times, that, you know, ketamine therapy is something that guys need to look into and do some research on, especially if you're down in a bad spot where you can't get out on your own. I think there's some medical care there, and that gives some real perspective opportunity for guys to kind of grow their mind in a way, because it does help with TBI, the neuroplasticity and things like that. Definitely in a clinical kind of setting that to reach out and go do. But I think there's a lot of benefit for guys that they're, 17, 18-year mark where they should go and explore that path, because I think it really helps them, traumatic growth, next perspective on next purpose. I think it helps kind of conjure that up in your brain to kind of say like, hey, that was a life of mine. I really love being in that section of my life as a Green Beret and whatever operator, or even just in the Army or any job at that you've been a high performer for a long time, that you need to be able to move on to something else. And I think that it's not necessary to go do at all. But if you are a person who's, suffered through traumatic events, that you're suicidal, depressed, have alcohol, substance abuse, I think that treatment really provides a good propel to like self-healing and to move you on to your next purpose in life.
It's so true. And we especially on this show, I talk a lot about getting help, and I key in sometimes on specific individuals, but one person that always gets overlooked is a team sergeant. And we don't talk about how vital it is to get those guys to take a knee before they take a team. Every SF guy that makes it to that E8 position or senior E7, and they get that job, which is the crowning achievement. Hey, you're going to take a team. You friggin' did it. They've been beat up. They've been through the ringer. How many deployments, divorces? They don't see their kids, and they finally get to the one job that they've been wanting to do forever. And that comes with a mountain of work, a mountain of stress. Guys aren't sleeping. Guys aren't eating right. And they're the first ones to show up every morning. They're leading the PT sessions. They're crushing it. And then we wonder why they're breaking down. If you're listening to this and you're that senior leader, whether it's in an infantry company, if you're a platoon sergeant, same thing goes for you. You got to take care of yourself. And there's a hesitancy to put yourself on the front of the line because men, mission, then me. But I will argue this. The mission is not going to happen without you. The men are going to be taken care of without you. That company, that team, that detachment commander or your platoon leader can't do the job without you. Chief's a great guy. Chief's a great backup for you, but he can't do what you do. He can't take care and cover down. So the most important thing you can do as that senior NCO is get help today. Start taking care of yourself so you can have that long career, so you can be there, so that your leadership can look at you and say, that's the team I want because they got the best NCO. And everybody knows SF survives and continues to grow and continues to achieve their missions, not because we got great officers, we got great warrant officers, but it's the fucking NCOs. It's the fucking team sergeant that drives those missions. They're the one that have to orchestrate. And look, I am a proud warrant officer. That is the greatest achievement of my military. I fucking loved being a chief. But without a team sergeant, you're not going anywhere. You're not going to get the missions that you want. So if you're a team sergeant leading or senior E7, senior E8s, listen to this, get the help you deserve. You deserve it just like everybody else. And when you're able to get better, when you're able to get your joints looked at, your mashed potato brains looked at, and all the things that you're dealing with, you're going to come back to that detachment and you're going to be ready to take them to the next mission and get them across the finish line. And we don't say that enough. We just say, well, I got to take care of the guys. So that's something that we have to promote more because they're overlooked. It's one of those things that really, it sucks, man. They're the most fucking worn out dudes in the regiment. They need help. And I want to ask you this. And if you're willing to be vulnerable, what were you dealing with that led to your going impatient? What was the final thing where it's just like, hey, I need to get help?
Oh, wow. The final thing all right. So I was in Key West, and it was early 2019, and I had been drinking a whole lot, and my wife had said something to me, and what she said is not what she said. I heard something completely different. I heard her say that you don't provide any value to this family. And I wrote a note and I said, tell the kids I love them. And I put it on the microwave sticky note and I left. And I was going to walk into the ocean. I was going to go downtown in Key West. I was going to drink a whole lot. And then I just wasn't going to come home. My wife freaks out. And she got a hold of some of my friends and some folks at the dive school. And there was a gentleman, Matt, who ended up going up to CAG and stuff. You might know him. I won't say his last name. Who sat down with me and really said, it's time to go get help. And so I went to the VA and then they said that, basically I was an alcoholic, that I had TBI, that I was PTSD, all this stuff. But at this point, this is my second suicide, almost ideation that I've had on active duty. My previous one was back in 2015 when I was going to the National Defense University to get my master's. And so I went to inpatient there and they just said, slow down your drinking, go back to work and stuff. But fast forward back to Key West, and I get, and so they're like, all right, you got to go to just ASAP recovery kind of place. Mm-hmm. And I was like, fine. They're like, because you have a substance abuse disorder on your dive physical, you got to go get treatment so that you can continue to dive. So I said, okay, fine. I'll go there and I'll go through this program. Self-referral, fine. Well, a month after I signed the paperwork there, I go do on the deep dive on the Vandenberg, and I get bent, and I get bent pretty hard. I get a pretty bad bubble in my leg, and I get the 8.5 hour ride in the chamber, and I come up and they do an echocardiogram bubble study on my heart, and I have a hole in my heart, so I'm disqualified from diving. And I said to the doc down there, I was like, listen, I'm not going to go to rehab because why? I can't dive. I'm not going to do it. It makes zero sense for me to go do some training, to go do some 2 weeks of stuff up here in Jacksonville, Florida, so that I can dive still, so I can clear my dive physical. I was like, I'm done. And the doc was like, you have a problem, Trevor. You need to go get help. And I was like, you're not wrong. I'll for sure. Yeah. And so I go up here to Jacksonville, and that program is substandard, and it really infuriates me because why are you taking me away from my family to go do some subpar training about cover your ass for the commander kind of thing? And I was like, this is not making me want to quit drinking or not be suicidal, not be depressed, not think about all the things that I've been through in my life. And so while I'm there, I I have like kind of my own free time, and I'm like driving around Jacksonville, and I'm like, all I feel in my body is death. Like, I don't think about my kids. I don't think about my wife. I don't think about my future. Everything inside me is like blacked out in it. And I'm just angry. Yeah. And I was like, I just want to end all of this. So there's a really bad suicidal like ideation feeling. And I go back to my counselor and I was like, I am feeling this way. And if I don't get help today, you're probably not going to see me tomorrow. And so at that moment, I was put back into the psych ward at Jacksonville. And I spent about 3 days there trying to like calm down and get me some help and stuff. And a doctor there was like, we have a 3-track program that you can go to here in Destin. And that's how I got to the Emerald Coast Behavioral Hospital. So it was like childhood sexual abuse, TBI, PTSD, PTSI, whatever you want to call it, substance abuse for narcotics and for alcohol. And I was like, that's all. I have all of those things. So I got there's multiple fucked up problems of my life. I'm going to go dive into and say like, and at that moment, and I said, yes, I will go. I said, I will stay there as long as possible until I'm healed. It doesn't matter. I'm making a choice to live right now. And I'm going to give 100% to that program when I got there. So I get to Emerald Coast and I just, we start doing different types of talk therapy. I'm doing yoga. I'm doing EMDR. I am getting different medications for migraines and trazodone and stuff for some sleep shit, but it doesn't work good for me. It fucks my sleep up. So I don't take any sleep aids or anything like that. It really makes me feel like all the work that I did that day gets fucking erased. And I don't like that. It's like drinking, trying to deal with a problem, going to sleep, and the problem's still there. It's like you do all this work and it just erases it. So I'd really stay away from all that stuff. And so I spent 60 days at that program and I just pounded the shit out of myself to get better. And I got to about a 60% solution, I think. And I felt really good. I was like, this is the greatest thing, how I feel like I'm going to go back to Key West and have a different perspective on life. And, it really projected me into getting ahead of what I was feeling inside and what I was thinking about my childhood. So I go back to Key West and I finish down there. And then I go back to Fort Bragg and I meet up with my friend, Jeff Dardia, who's the NCOIC of the Human Performance and Wellness at Third Group, who I've known for 10 years being a diver. He's a phenomenal resource of knowledge and stuff. And he had met with some folks about the stellate ganglion block and the ketamine treatment. And I was like, sure, man, I've been through so much shit in my life. I'll go do anything. Like, I'm not going to, I was like, yes. And so after I got up there, about 6 months later, I ended up going to Chicago and I got the dual sympathetic reset done on my left and right side for the stellate ganglion block and 6 ketamine treatments in a week. And that week is by far the thing that completely like changes who I feel about myself, what I think about my past life, how much I ruminate about shitty crap, and how I feel about my family and who I am as a father completely changes. And so from that time, and then I get to stand on this stage in Portland to kind of like tell the world like what I went through and who I am. And they talk about super vulnerable and very scary moment of my life to go on to that Red X in Portland to show the world that like you can go through really bad stuff and still be a happy person and still find that life is an amazing thing that you can retake on, relearn, have a new perspective I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to give people hope that they too can get better. Yeah. And so this whole, like, it's a 3-year process, right? So it's time. It's so much time. It is not something that's going to happen quickly. And it's a lot of effort. There's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of falling back on what you've done and going forward and this backward. It's not a constant, it's not a constant up like this at all. It's definitely a mountain of steps that you got to go through. So that's a lot of how I got bad to good, help from doctors in the middle, some self-reflection in there on my own, some growth as a family. And then to the other side of this journey to see that like, this is a calling, this is a purpose that I feel that people need to hear, because they from our community, like most of us only trust guys who've been there. And it goes for first responders, it goes to regular Army folks, to special operators, to anyone who does a real tactical, intense job, need to hear from people who have done that in a like relatable sense. And so that's where I kind of met, and that's where it kind of got me. And it's really awesome to like kind of like build that and share that with folks. So that's kind of the whole realm of how I got here and what I had to go through and what I went through, and to how you get better.
Yeah, it's mental health is not something that's going to get fixed with a magic pill, a magic treatment, and then you're just over and it's done. You're a better human being. It's a journey. It's you ruck up every morning and you continue your path. Along the way, you might veer off. You might lose your azimuth and you have to take a knee and get back on it. But it's the greatest single journey you can ever undertake. And it's I think the most definitive thing that comes from it is understanding to let go of self-hate. That's the greatest thing that I've come to realize. The amount of, and our stories are very similar. I believe through, and it's, this is a journey. This is a process. It's a project that's been ongoing for several years. And every time I talk to another soft professional that's vulnerable enough and they share their journey, the same things come into play. A traumatic past, a childhood where there was some sort of trauma, not being able to address it, alcohol or drugs, and then allostatic load and stress that goes like this for decades. And you just keep going. You keep pushing it down. We are humans. We are going to break, and that's okay, because the beauty of it, the most beautiful thing you will ever experience in life, is that rebreath, that taking that first breath of understanding like, oh shit, I'm alive. Taking that first conscious breath and understanding like, I am not out of the fight. I might not be able to do this thing that I was so passionate and in love with, but there's a higher calling. There's a new mission. I am now energized and revitalized to be a better husband, to be a better father, to be a mentor, to be part of my community. And it's our conversations, our discussions not only help the rest of our regiment, the rest of our brotherhood, but other service members, because our stories and our ability to be vulnerable is giving hope to everybody that will tune in and listen to us. What was that moment like when you went on that TEDx stage? What was that rebirth like, being able to go there and not experience it from a moment of like, I'm still hanging on to my trauma, but being able to champion it and advocate for others?
That moment, the moment there seems big, but the time it took to get to that stage is what has to be understood first. I stood in this office for 3 months, rehearsing, drilling, practicing over, putting my mind into that building to be able to go do that. It's not like I just showed up one day and I was like, here's what I'm going to tell the world. But I've repeated this story over and over and over, and it's becoming that it's just my life, and it's not a rumination. It's not painful. It's telling the story is the therapy. That being there shows other people that they can do the same. And the relatability of the story is so common that people get a fire in them to say that that guy just did something that I want to be able to do. I had women say like that, I want my husband to be able to do what you just did, because if he can do that, it will change his life forever. The biggest thing that you can work on, if that is a story that you need to tell that's really difficult, is to just tell somebody you don't know on the street, get in a conversation with someone and just tell them. Like, everybody wants to hear a story. And I think it's awesome. Like, the podcast of today to me feels like men are coming around a fire and talking about the war that's inside them and the war that they've been through for decades. And we're taking a platform, and it's showing the world that strong, vulnerable men can tell a story about what they've been through. And I think that is a huge catalyst to get men talking, where 20 years ago, we were not doing that.
No, and you're 100% correct. It leads, when we hold on to this, when we don't share, it's slowly killing us. And the data is sound. You can look at the data, what it does to your heart, what it does to your insides when you're just dealing with this trauma, and the hypertension that it causes you, and the bad vices that you pick up because you're trying to hide these demons and keep them locked away. It frees you. And what we don't understand is when you're vulnerable enough to share your story, you're giving somebody else the ability to do the same. It's like sitting around a campfire and redistributing the weight around your rucks. Hey, I got 200 rounds of saw, man. I'm dying. Oh, hey, I'll give me a couple of your freaking pouches. I'll take a couple of that. Anybody want 240 ammo? I got a whole bunch. Yeah, man, give me a little bit. You distribute. You allow that weight to come off, and you say, holy shit, I'm not being judged. I'm not being ridiculed. No one's turning me away. But for a long time, that's how I felt. Oh, nobody wants to hear this. No one wants to hear what I've been through, what I'm dealing with. Just swallow it down. Keep swallowing it down. And that'll kill us. But like you said, being able to share this is not only cathartic and a release for us, but it gives others the understanding of like, oh shit,
yeah,
I can do it too.
It's like, I look at it as being a father and telling stories is like, wouldn't you like your son to know who you are and the things that you've been through?
Yeah.
Don't you want to hear the stories of what your son or daughter go through in their life? Why would you not want to hear that? Like, that's incredible. Like, they're always going to hold you up as this hero, no matter what. Yeah. And having the hero fall is part of the story. And to come back and triumph is what we all have done. And like, it's phenomenal. And then you're like, you don't want to go to that journey with your family. I think you would lose life. Like, that's what I think life is about, is we have struggles, we share with it, we grow together, and people, like, that's the community. That's why we need to be outside. That's why we need to be around people like us, like-minded, because the people who are around us, like, their ideals reflect onto me, and they reflect onto my family, and the family of the ODA comes together when there's bad problems, and you can have that same thing here. After that, it maybe makes it's a little harder, a little bit more effort, because it's things, things in the community that you have to go out and go to, versus that's their job and they're just people there. You have your enlisted friend that's just there with you. It's not the case anymore. So now you got to build some other communication skills and build some gaps with folks that maybe have no military service, and like, being able to bridge that gap is a great opportunity for us to develop ourselves. Yeah. Because we want to go to the easy button of the VFW. of guys who have gone through the same thing. That is 100% being lazy as fuck. Because you don't have to share anything with guys who went to the Argandab or went to, Camp Price or went to Cobra or TK or, went to Baghdad and all these other shit. You don't have, it's already known. So you never have to share. That's what you need to get away from. You have to get into a place where you must share, because that's how you really grow. Yep. I think it's just going back to the thing that is self-explanatory, and no sharing, no vulnerability happens. Like, you're setting yourself up for failure.
I think the greatest thing that we can do as we transition, when we get back and get back into becoming a civilian, is embracing it and understanding that you have to be part of your community. One of the biggest things for me that's helped me is getting back to going to church. What a great place to finally, and I know it's uncomfortable. It can be scary to go there, not knowing anybody, but get reestablished. Get established where you live, in the communities. Be willing to take your hand, extend it out, shake hands, and say, hey, I'm Denny. I just retired from 7th group again. I'm proud to be here. I love coming around here. Like, it seems scary. What you realize is that person is going to enrich your life just like you're going to enrich their life. They don't know what it's like to be in the military, but you don't know what it's like to be a small business owner. They can give you information and give you a perspective in life that you don't have. And then you have this new powerful network of people from different backgrounds, different places, that enjoy your company and they want you around. So that's how you strengthen and build your new tribe. It's better. It's a greater brotherhood now, because it's enriched with people that don't have the same backgrounds.
It just takes work and time. It doesn't just doesn't happen the day you get out. This is a 36-month process that you should be doing before you get out. Like, like, you need to take your perspective of the Army and look at it as a company. Like, it is no longer the thing that I have selfless service. It is a fucking job. And I'm going to look at it as a job. I'm going to start pulling away and start worrying about me and about what my next is. And this place can get, let's put it away for a while, and let's and reframe what you think it and how you feel what it is, because it needs to happen, because you don't want to be out and then taking 3 to 5 years to get over what you were just in. Like, use the time that you're in the Army to get out of the Army. Don't wait, because it's scary. And if you can at least get the resources that you need, if there's something that comes up while you're still in, versus on the other side where you're like, I don't even know where to start. And that would be really scary to try to put little systems and processes in place after you're out, because you're like, I don't need this. And then one day you're sitting on your porch and like, man, I'm really going through some tough times. What do I do? I don't even know who the first person to call or to look up. And like, you've failed yourself, because you should have already known all the resources that SOCOM, Care Coalition, all these nonprofits are, if shit goes bad, because everyone wants to plan for bad things happening in their family. I'm going to learn how to shoot. I'm going to make sure we have enough food. I'm going to do all of that, but I'm never going to fucking prepare for what happens when I have a fucking breakdown and I have no idea what to do. I don't even know who to call. I don't know what I can do, what is available for what as a Green Beret, what is out there. Like, put those things in your notebook of stuff that I know a guy that is involved here that I can call at a moment's notice. So guys will come out of the woodworks, but you better be fucking ready for it. When it's time to ask for help, there is a lot of things that are out there. You just got to go, you got to know the right number, the right email, know the right people.
Yeah.
So that is another community of things that you need to be aware of. Your family needs to be aware of, so that when something bad does happen, your wife, other people in your life know who to call it. It's a good, part of your will, in a sense that, like, I hate to say that it's just a matter of time, that if you haven't reached out for help and you went through the GWAT for 20 years, it's just a matter of time until those days of moral injury and self-reflection about what you've done and what you've seen is going to come to haunt you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to take a moment to plug and share what I think is one of the most amazing resources that's helped me. The Green Beret Foundation is an amazing resource for Green Berets. With that being said, one of the greatest inpatient centers that I benefited from and continues to support, I've referred many of guys to them. Mission Resiliency at Laurel Ridge is one of the best places to go inpatient. If you are listening to this and you are having issues and you feel that inpatient is the way to go, please look into Laurel Ridge Treatment Center in El Paso, Texas. If you're a Green Beret, go to Green Beret Foundation, hit that request for support button. Let them know what you're struggling with. Let them know what you need assistance with. The frameworks have already been established. They already have a frame of reference. They already know how to get people to these treatment centers. Please don't wait. It's only a matter of time. We are humans. It's okay to break. It's okay to realize that, hey, I'm going to shoot the signal flare. I'm going to go out there and get help. What we don't want is to get to a situation where you're already past that place, where you're already in that moment of, I don't know what to do. And you might risk and do something that none of us want to have you go through. Being a survivor myself, I know Trevor being a survivor himself, we don't want anybody to experience that. So please be willing to raise that hand, go into the unknown, be courageous and brave enough to say, I need help. In those moments of vulnerability, that's where the healing can start. That's where it can begin. So yeah, Trevor, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being courageous and vulnerable enough to share your story. And man, I'm excited for what's coming next for you, man. Any chance that you're working on a book or any other projects?
I'm actually just editing my memoir here to hopefully to be released by the early summer. So it's a account of everything as from a child to college to war and past that and moving into this next purpose in life. It's kind of a guide to like shitty stuff and to show that, there's pain is a part of being human and human is painful kind of a perspective is that all the things that you're feeling, everyone else feels. To say that I'm going through it all, the thick of it on my own it's not true. And it's easy to get into the perspective and mindset that you're the only one suffering. And I don't want it. And I don't want to suffer anymore. And I think that's a fucking cop out. It's selfish and it does nothing to provide anything good can come out of it. Because I always tend to think about my kids if I was to commit suicide and what that would do to the rest of their life. And I would rather be just sad and mad and angry at the world than to put that on my kids ever. And it's just, deep reflection. And I got help from the Special Forces Foundation as well. They paid a lot of money and there was really no questions asked. And I did it on active duty. And SOCOM was the Navy SEAL I was working with. As an 06 was like, go take care of yourself. And it was,
and final plug.
I
know you got to go, but shout out to SOCOM Care Coalition. If you're here in Northwest Florida, go see your representative at 7th Group. That's Flo. Hit my man up. If you need assistance with anything, that man will friggin' move mountains to get you the care that you deserve, to get you where you need to go. Don't be afraid of reaching out to these resources. If at any moment you have questions and don't know who to turn to, send me an email, sechaltpodcast@gmail.com. I got you. We can point you to the right direction. You're not alone in this fight. And like we like to say on the show, we get through this together. You didn't make it through the deployments on your own. You always had a team. You always had a platoon. You had a company. We get through this together. Trevor, thank you for being here today, brother. And I hope to see you all next time. Till then, take care. If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe, and head on over to our Patreon where you can be part of our community and get access to all of our episodes as soon as they drop. And remember, we get through this together. Take care.